Good evening to you both. And let's begin with renewed focus today on the federal Liberal caucus retreat in Edmonton, the Premier's meeting with the Prime Minister Wednesday, and the projects Ottawa is prepared to advance.
I would say that my meeting with the Prime Minister was about as encouraging as any meeting I've had with the federal government in a long time. I think he really understands the issues that we put on the table, and we're working through how to address them.
To be in Canada's national interest, a major project must strengthen Canada's autonomy, our resilience, and our security. It must have clear benefits for Canadians. It must have a high likelihood of being completed. It must contribute to clean growth in Canada's climate goals.
The Prime Minister this morning on announcing the much-anticipated first phase of what the Liberal government is calling nation-building projects, a list that includes a nuclear project in Ontario, a container terminal project in Quebec, a copper mine in Saskatchewan, pair of projects as well in BC, including expansion of an LNG operation. Of note, an Alberta pipeline was not included. So, John, the Premier, she posted on social media about Wednesday's meeting with the PM, and in it she writes, she calls it exceptionally productive. She says she's more optimistic than ever that the concerns of Albertans are finally being heard. How does that play with a list that doesn't make much reference to nation building in our province?
So the reaction to this is very interesting. So Premier Smith is quite positive, probably the most positive that she's ever been to Prime Minister Mark Carney, even though the pipeline was not on the list. And you know, both Carney and Smith have emphasized that just because the pipeline isn't on the list now doesn't mean that it won't be added in the future. And in fact, pipelines were that has been a big thing that the Prime Minister has been talking about. The big problem or obstacle, of course, is that a private sector company hasn't come forward to indicate their interest in taking that on, which means if the government were to do it at this point, it would have to be a crown corporation, which it would like to avoid. And so I think part of what we're seeing now is to sort of build the confidence in the private sector so that a company does come forward, so that the government doesn't have to take it on themselves. And so a lot of this is just laying the groundwork to increase investor confidence to invest in that.
Duane, the Premier's optimism, what's that say to you about what's happening maybe behind the scenes?
Oh, I think there are clear negotiations going on between the federal government, the Alberta government, and pipeline developers on this. And what they're trying to work out is what are the challenges? How can those be minimized around legislation and regulation? And what sort of partnership is at play here? So we're not going to talk about a crown corporation, but are we talking about some sort of public-private partnership? And what does that look like? And so I do know that these are occurring. And when you listen to both Carney and Smith, they know it's coming too, but it's premature to announce it. So both of them are on the same page. And I agree with John. This is some of the most positive things that Danielle Smith has ever said about the federal government. So she knows that something is coming. It's just not ready yet. And of the 5 projects, there are benefits to Alberta, particularly the LNG terminal. Alberta is a major producer of natural gas. You expand the terminal at Kitimat, that provides opportunities for Alberta natural gas developers and Alberta companies operating in British Columbia. The nuclear power plant in Darlington, Alberta wants SMRs too, right? So if they're successfully built in Darlington, that has a payoff to Alberta and the mining project. So I have a sense of optimism. It's fascinating that when the list came out yesterday or was leaked out, there were conservatives on social media absolutely attacking Carney. And this was amplified by Pierre Poilievre saying he's done nothing. And then you get the Premier of the province who's in those rooms with a very different tone. I'll be interested to see if that changes some of the debate.
John, that social media post we mentioned a moment ago, in it, Danielle Smith also asked Albertans for patience. How much work is the Premier going to need to do behind the scenes with the UCP's base of support?
It's going to be tough because, as Duane said, the federal Conservatives are attacking Carney for not making enough progress, right? And so you're seeing this disjoint between Poilievre and Smith in terms of their messaging on this, which is very different because Poilievre's been offside with provincial Conservatives, but provincial Conservatives in other parts of the country, he and Danielle Smith have tended to be quite aligned, and so I think that's why Danielle Smith has asked for patience because, as Duane said, there are negotiations that are likely going on behind the scenes. These negotiations take time. You never want to negotiate in public, and so there has to be a certain sort of placating of the most critical folks of Mark Carney, because the last thing that Premier Smith wants is for this to blow up and for these behind the scenes negotiations to go nowhere. And so that's where it's so interesting to see this divide between on one hand the federal Conservatives and a lot of the conservative commentariat. And then on the other side, Premier Smith, who is, at least at this point in time, very much on side with Mr.
Okay, let's shift now to the Labour front. The Alberta Teachers Association signaling Wednesday that its members will strike October 6th if they do not get what they consider a fair deal through bargaining, a move the Premier calling disappointing.
If we can make some progress on classroom conditions, getting more people in the classroom, we're prepared to do that. So I hope that we've got the ability to get back to the bargaining table, come to an agreement together so that we can avoid strike action.
Meanwhile, members of the Health Sciences Association of Alberta voting against a tentative agreement with AHS. The union says a strike vote isn't being called, but it is urging the province to bring forward a better offer. Duane, on the teachers front, how much of a door do you see opening now to a resumption of talks, and who do you see making the first move?
Well, the ATA already returned to the table after announcing strike on October 6th, right? So they did sort of a carrot and stick approach. And when you listen to Smith, she acknowledges that this is not necessarily about the pay of teachers. This is about hiring more teachers as well, which is also an ATA demand. So previously, Nate Horner and Dimitris Nikolaidis focused on the pay increase of existing teachers and ignored the other issues on the table. Smith just opened that door up.
John, the Health Sciences Association membership voting to reject their tentative deal. To what degree does that compound the challenges facing the Smith government now on the Labour front?
Oh, it compounds it, absolutely. The government scored a victory in terms of the deal that it reached with AUPE, where they offered them 12%. I can't remember off the top of my head what they offered HSAA, but 12% is also what they offered the teachers. Now, it's important to note that the AUPE deal was only ratified with about a 63-64% vote from the membership. So yes, it passed. It was a clear majority, right? But it was far from a resounding endorsement of the deal. And I, just people that I know who are members of ATA have expressed some grumbling to me that, they wish the union had held out for a better offer. And so, I think that's why HSAA is quite aggressive in its position, and why ATA set the October 6th strike deadline. So yeah, I think yes, this is about more supports, more teachers in the classroom, that sort of thing. But the ATA's messaging has also been clear that they have not, their wages haven't kept up with inflation. And so yeah, with HSAA rejecting their offer, the government is going to have to move a little more to meet where ATA wants them to be to avoid a strike, I think.
We heard from Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek on her re-election bid off the top this evening. John, what do you make of the message the incumbent mayor is bringing to her campaign?
It's a bit of a different Jyoti Gondek than we saw in the early stages of her term as mayor. Whereas initially, early on, we saw she's quite activist, quite openly progressive, and I don't think she's stopped being progressive, but certainly, the messaging around economic growth, around public safety, is more sort of in line with center left kind of a candidate, right? And so, I think she's tacking towards the center in an effort to, not be billed as a progressive, far left activist, which is what many of her critics bill her as.
Duane, to what degree do you see Jyoti Gondak's re-election bid a defense of the policies of the current city council?
You're often tied to city council when you're the mayor, regardless of what your votes were. And we know council is not popular, but councils typically are not popular, and incumbents still win. I don't know if the messaging will change the framing of Jyoti Gondak. She is still viewed as the progressive candidate on the ballot, but she is in a very different place than she was a year ago. There was a lot of anger towards Gondak around the arena, around the water pipes, and some of that has dissipated. And you'll notice she's going to run in some respects similar to what she did in 2021, where she didn't run against Davison and Farkas. She really ran against Jason Kenney. And when you hear her talk about the party systems, that appears to be running against Danielle Smith's idea of political parties. And so she's going to use the party system as a wedge by saying, I'm an independent.
John, how divisive a mayoral race do you see building in Calgary?
It could be quite divisive. I mean, parties are certainly going to add to that, right? They do reinforce divisions in citizen surveys across the vast industrial West. You ask people what they don't like politics, and they usually list partisan somewhere close to the top. And so, I think, that's only going to add to an already ideologically charged, affectively polarized environment. On the other hand, the fact that the two frontrunners, Jyoti Gondak and Jeremy Farkas, have openly eschewed being part of parties could have a dampening effect on that. And so, it's really a wild card what the dynamic of the race is going to be. And the other factor is, of course, Gondak is arguably the only progressive candidate there, and in a crowded field of right and center right candidates, that there might actually be more infighting on that side of the spectrum within those candidates rather than across the spectrum.
Duane, how likely is this mayoral race to end up being a battle between independents and municipal parties?
That's going to be a challenge because, as John pointed out, the two perceived frontrunners are both running as independents. And it's the other three that are running with party structure. I think that may play a bigger role in the council races than the mayor's races. But on the issue of divisiveness, on the one hand, Jyoti Gondak went through a recall petition a year ago. That was pretty divisive. On the other, Farkas has softened some of his critique against Gondak compared to how he ran in 2021. And part of that is a realization he was running as a bit of a conservative caricature in 21. Now he's speaking a lot more with his own voice. So I think that the barbs are going to go between Sharp, Davison, and Thiessen versus the other two, as opposed to Gondak versus Farkas. But if it becomes a two-person race in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, who knows what's going to happen.
John, are you getting a sense for one topic that may emerge as the front runner in determining this mayoral race?
It's difficult to say. I mean, like lots of people have been talking about public safety, but at the same time, I mean, the economy continues to be a concern for people, everything from cost of living to house prices to economic development. So it's going to be tough. And we are in a very volatile political context, outside of Calgary, right? The province, the national, the international sphere. So, I mean, I think the only certainty is uncertainty, and we could be in for an unpredictable race.
Duane, last 30 seconds to you on that topic.
Well, it depends on where you live. And for many Calgarians, it's about zoning. Others, it is about crime. And for a third category, it's about the relationship with the provincial government and parties. So which one of those emerges to the top, we'll have to see.
All right, gentlemen, we're out of time. Have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
See you, Michael. See you, John.